She was 23, a solo hiker with a detailed plan, a bright yellow sleeping bag, and a fierce sense of independence. She disappeared into the Utah wilderness and was never seen again. For 6 years, there was nothing, not a clue, not a footprint, not a trace. Then, one summer afternoon, a fisherman spotted something beneath the surface of a remote lake. A flash of yellow, a bundle wrapped in wire, and a horror that shattered 2 families and rewrote everything investigators thought they knew. This is not just a story of one missing girl. This is a story of secret betrayal and a killer who almost got away. So before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell. You're about to follow a story so haunting it might just change the way you think about being alone in the wild. Introduction. In September of 2012, Asha Bhaduri, an experienced solo hiker, vanished without a trace while trekking through Utah's remote wilderness. For weeks, search teams combed over 2 million acres of rugged terrain. They found her car at the trailhead, locked, untouched, but no Asha. It was as if the forest swallowed her whole. Her disappearance made headlines. Her photo standing on a wooden bridge, purple hiking shirt, smiling beneath her glasses, became the face of a mystery that refused to give answers. Then, 6 years later, a yellow sleeping bag floated into view on the bottom of a remote lake. What was wrapped inside would shatter everything. The vanishing of Asha Bhaduri. Asha wasn't reckless. She was the kind of person who planned everything, maps marked with ink gear, checked and rechecked, and even scheduled check-ins with her father every 72 hours. She had prepared for this trip like a general prepares for war. Her destination, the Uinta Wasatch Cache National Forest. Her route precise, well-documented, remote. She had even booked a flight to Salt Lake City and rented a car to reach the trailhead. And on the morning of her hike, her father, Kalen, walked the first 100 yards with her just to say goodbye. She smiled for one last photo, glasses catching the light backpack towering behind her, her yellow sleeping bag glowing like a beacon. She promised to check in by the 3rd day. That message never came. The search that found nothing. At first, Kalen reassured himself. Maybe she had no signal. Maybe her phone died. Asha was smart, resourceful. She had solar chargers. She knew how to conserve battery. But by day 5, calls went unanswered. By day 6, he was sitting in a police station in Oregon, reporting his daughter missing in a wilderness 1,000 miles away. Search and rescue was launched immediately. Helicopters scoured the forest canopy. Teams on foot combed the trail, then wider and wider circles. They found her car in the designated lot doors, locked gear untouched inside. She had made it into the forest, but after that the trail went cold. No footprints, no dropped gear, no signs of distress or attack. It was as if she had walked into the trees and vanished. A father's long silence. As autumn arrived and the first snowflakes dusted the mountains, the official search ended. Kalen kept calling the sheriff's office weekly at first, then monthly. He kept her room untouched, maps still on the walls, a half-finished book still on her nightstand. By 2014, her case had been moved into the cold case files. And there it sat, unsolved, unexplained, until one detective pulled it off the shelf and saw something the original investigators had missed. The ghost hiker. Detective Miles Corbin was quiet, meticulous, and persistent, the kind of man who believed no case ever truly died. And something about Asha's disappearance didn't sit right with him. No sign of an animal attack, no gear scattered along a slope, no sign she fell. People don't just evaporate. So in 2015, he took a second look, this time at her laptop. While the original team had scanned it briefly, Corbin dug deeper. He found a bookmarked link buried in a folder, an old, barely functional hiking forum called the Ridgeline Collective. There he found her username, Asha B. She had posted about boots, water filters, trail advice. But one thread stood out. Private messages from a user named Karen Wraith. Karen Wraith publicly. The user was an eccentric writing about ghost hiking, vanishing into the wild without a trace. But in private messages to Asha, his tone changed. He wasn't just weird, he was manipulative. You don't seek solitude, he wrote. You seek obliteration. To vanish completely is freedom. Asha was curious but cautious. She asked questions, engaged, but the last message was clear. The Wintas are a good place to practice becoming a ghost. I can show you the paths that aren't on any map. It was dated just days before she disappeared. For the first time in 3 years, Corbin had a lead. Chasing a phantom, tracking the identity behind Karen Wraith wasn't easy. The site was defunct. The IP addresses were ancient. Most were traced to libraries and cafes. But one post in 2011 was linked to a university network, and from there to a student ID, Alistair Finch. They found his social media old blog posts. Everything echoed that same anti-society, disappear into the wild rhetoric. Was this the man Asha met? It seemed certain until Corbin pulled his travel history. Alistair Finch had left the U.S. in May 2012, 4 months before Asha's trip, and never returned. He'd never set foot in Utah. It was a devastating dead end. The ghost they had been chasing was only ever a shadow online. The lake that gave up a secret. The case went cold again until summer 2018. 19-year-old Tyler Sims was fishing in Silas Lake, far from any of Asha's planned routes. As the sun hit the water, something caught his eye. A flash of yellow. At first, he thought it was trash, a tarp maybe, a pool float. But the shape was all wrong. He paddled closer, peered into the depths, and saw something horrifying. A long, lumpy shape, bound in wire, weighted with chains. Tyler called his father, who told him exactly what to do. Leave, don't touch it. Call the sheriff. Within hours, Silas Lake was a crime scene. The sleeping bag divers descended into the dark water. They found a grotesquely swollen yellow sleeping bag wrapped tight in rusted wire. Attached were 2 25-pound barbell plates. It was slowly hoisted onto a boat and brought ashore. Forensic teams cut through the wire one snap at a time. When they peeled back the wet nylon, everyone braced for what they assumed was coming. Asha Bhaduri. But it wasn't her. It was a man. John Doe Silas Lake. The remains were badly decomposed. He had no ID, no wallet, but his teeth did the talking. Dental records identified him as Milo Raddick, age 24, from Phoenix, Arizona. He'd been reported missing 6 years earlier, just days after Asha disappeared. 2 cold cases, one from Oregon, one from Arizona, had just collided in a Utah lake. And wrapped around the body of one was the most distinctive item of the other. Asha's bright yellow sleeping bag. A nightmare-linked detective Corbin was stunned. Asha's signature yellow sleeping bag, distinct, custom-ordered, and unforgettable, had just become part of a homicide case. But the victim wasn't Asha. It was a stranger. Except Milo Raddick wasn't a stranger after all. Both Asha and Milo had vanished within days of each other in September 2012. From different states, with different stories. Now, they were connected in the most chilling way possible. But why? How? The search for connection, Corbin's team began digging. They combed through Milo's background, a nature enthusiast, frequent solo hiker, and generally quiet young man. But the coincidences piled up. Asha's college friend Lena remembered a conversation just before Asha's trip. Asha mentioned a new kindred spirit from Arizona she'd met on an online hiking forum. They were both planning trips to Utah at the same time. His name she didn't remember, but he understood her. And that was enough. Maybe her solo trip hadn't been solo after all. A motel and a map. Detectives returned to Asha's belongings. In a box untouched since 2012 was a torn business card. It read, Starlight, something, and a partial phone number with a Utah area code. They searched old business registries and found it, the Starlight Motor Inn, a seedy motel miles from any known trail. It was a halfway point between Asha's trailhead and where Milo's abandoned car had been found in Arizona. The motel became ground zero. Room 7. The new owner was no help, but old records still existed in a mildewed box buried in the back room. In it, Officer Diaz found a guest ledger from September 12. One entry stood out, John Smith, AZ plates, silver sedan, room 7. Milo drove a silver sedan. That was enough. Now they needed witnesses. The housekeeper remembers. They found a woman named Beatrice Rowe, who had worked cleaning rooms at the Starlight. At first she remembered nothing. But when detectives showed her Asha's and Milo's pictures, her demeanor changed. The girl, I remember her. She didn't belong in a place like that. Then more memories returned, fragmented, haunting. Room 7. A couple, a nervous young man, a quiet, uneasy girl, and a third man. He wasn't registered, just showed up. Big, angry, dangerous. Beatrice recalled an argument, shouting, a loud, sickening thud, then silence. She was too scared to call the police. You didn't call the cops at the Starlight. That's how you got hurt. But her most chilling memory came 2 nights later. At dawn, she saw the older man loading a long, heavy shape wrapped in a tarp into Milo's trunk. Asha stood nearby, silent, hollow. Then they were gone. Beatrice never saw her again. The man with no name. Now the investigation had focus. The third man. He wasn't a random stranger. He was someone who killed Milo, used Asha to clean up the scene, and disappeared into the dark. But who was he? Hackett's task force dove into Milo's life again, looking for signs of secrets. That's when they found it. A double life. On paper, Milo Radich looked clean part-time jobs, hiking trips, outdoor gear purchases. But Officer Diaz noticed something: subtle cash deposits. Regular, just under the legal reporting threshold, always before or after a hiking trip. That wasn't trail money. Milo wasn't just hiking. He was running something. The team mapped his travel patterns. His trips weren't to scenic peaks. They were to forgotten trailheads near industrial zones or tiny airports. Milo was a courier. The gear was a disguise. His backpack wasn't for trail mix, and tents, it was for packages that needed to move quietly. The handler. Then came the real break. Using newly recovered cell tower metadata, investigators isolated a burner phone that pinged in the same areas as Milo's legitimate phone almost every time. It was always nearby, always active when Milo traveled. Someone was managing him. Tracing burner phones is almost impossible, but luck helped. The phone was purchased with a credit card. That card led to a name: Dante Voss. The monster. Behind the curtain, Dante Voss had a rap sheet: 3 decades-long assault intimidation fraud, but nothing ever stuck. He was slippery, protected, always one step ahead. But his last known photo matched Beatrice Rowe's description perfectly. This wasn't a phantom. This was a predator. And now he had a name. The theory comes together. The task force built a timeline. Milo wanted out. He confided in Asha, someone he barely knew but trusted. He asked her to meet him in Utah for backup, for safety. They met at the Starlight Motor Inn. Voss followed, confronted, murdered Milo. Asha became a witness, a liability. So Voss used her to clean the scene, then forced her into the car and disappeared. Milo was dumped in a lake. Asha, still missing. The manhunt. They had the story, the motive, the pattern, but they didn't have him. Voss had vanished in 2012. Off the grid, no ID, no trace. But one analyst, cross-referencing relatives of his old criminal associates, found a name on a rental form in Boise, Idaho. David Vossan, same age, no history before 2012. Surveillance confirmed it, 98% facial match. They had their ghost. The knock on the door. No raid, no sirens. Just a quiet knock. When Hackett showed his badge, Dante Voss set down his coffee and placed his hands behind his back. He didn't fight. He didn't run. He was tired of running. The interrogation. In the room, Voss was cold, arrogant, silent. Hackett let him talk himself into a corner, then began laying down bricks. Milo's financials, the burner phone, the guest ledger from the motel, Beatrice's testimony. Voss cracked. So, what's the deal? There's no deal for murder, Hackett replied. But there's the truth. Yours or ours. Voss leaned back, paused, and began to speak. The confession, no tears, no guilt. Just facts. He confirmed everything. Milo was his mule. Milo wanted out. Asha was insurance. It didn't work. He got loud, Voss said, so I shut him up. He described killing Milo like it was fixing a leaky pipe. Then came the worst part. Voss forced Asha to help wrap the body in her own sleeping bag, forced her into the car, and then he drove. But where? I want to guarantee, Voss said, solitary. I've got enemies inside. Hackett didn't flinch. You tell us where she is. That's the only way this ends. Voss picked up a pen and began to draw a map. The map. It was crude, hand-drawn. A few dirt roads, a fork, a rusted water tank. At the bottom, an X, a single mark in the middle of Utah's vast desert near the Nevada border. That's where you'll find her, Voss said. Detective Hackett stared at it. It didn't feel like closure. It felt like a final dare. But it was all they had. The desert knows. 2 days later, a convoy of FBI agents, search teams, and forensic specialists rumbled down a forgotten stretch of desert road. The land was vast and empty, silent, made to swallow secrets whole. They searched mile after mile. Then, 3 large rock formations exactly as Voss had drawn them. At the base, a shallow depression in the dirt. The soil was denser, slightly darker. The team began to dig. The final recovery brushes, trowels, quiet reverence. Then a glimpse of faded purple fabric. Then boom. They had found her, Asha Bhaduri. She was finally coming home. Justice delivered. Voss was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, kidnapping, sexual assault. He was found guilty, sentenced to life without parole. He'll die behind bars. But that victory came at a cost. For Kalin Bhaduri, Asha's father, it wasn't justice. It was a conclusion, a full stop on a story he never wanted to finish. The girl on the bridge. He buried her near home. Not in the desert, not in silence. The photo he took of her bright purple shirt, glasses, yellow sleeping bag perched high, sat framed beside her casket. That photo, once a celebration of independence, had become the first piece of evidence in a 6-year odyssey. A daughter lost, a friend murdered, a sleeping bag that solved it all. Asha's legacy. There was no happy ending, but there was resolution, because one fisherman looked twice, because one detective didn't stop pulling threads, because one father refused to forget. Asha was more than a case file. She was a spark, a planner, a dreamer, a trailblazer. And thanks to her story, no one will look at a missing hiker the same way again. If you found this story as haunting and as powerful as we did, like, comment, subscribe, so we can keep sharing the stories that deserve to be remembered. Stay safe, stay alert, and never underestimate the quiet strength of someone who walks alone.